Welcome to Desert Sun Crypto. I'm your host, the Desert Sun. We're going to start off with this episode with Senator Ted Cruz.
The ugly truth with which Bismarck understood, and which is particularly true on cryptocurrency, there aren't 5 senators in this body with any real understanding of how cryptocurrency operates.
Boy, is that true. And thank you, Senator Cruz, for stating the obvious. Let's dive into it. I've got a really short and sweet one today. Of all the news going on, everything in the crypto space seems to be centered around everything happening on Capitol Hill. To give you the abridged version of where we're at, nothing has moved forward. In fact, everything is moving the other direction. And here's pretty much what's going on. I won't go into the details earlier today because it's just going to be too confusing. And to be quite honest, that's just how this politics game works. But the latest out of Washington, D.C. is a lone senator rejects a crypto compromise in the infrastructure bill. That's H.R. 3684, which has been highlighted over and over again. Now, the lone individual is Senator Shelby. So let me just kind of give you hit on some bullet points that Forbes so aptly laid out. On Monday, in a Monday afternoon session, the Senate rejected a last-minute amendment to specify that new regulation forcing businesses to report cryptocurrency transactions in excess of $10,000 to the IRS should only affect traditional brokers. Businesses who conduct transactions on exchanges where consumers buy, sell, and trade digital assets. So initially, the bill, there was a problem with how brokers was defined. If it went forward, any and almost everybody in the space was going to have to report their information to the IRS, which did not seem fair and seemed like it was going after the wrong people. And if anything, it stalls innovation. And earlier in the speech that Senator Cruz was giving, he talks about how it's sending some of our brightest talent overseas, and he's right. Then what happens is Senator Richard Shelby struck down an amendment by objecting to a request for unanimous consent, which would have only adopted a measure if no senator objected to it. So they basically had, an amendment, and everyone agreed to it on both sides, which is rare to see with Senate. But it was struck down. Now, there are some senators that were working toward preserving and moving this thing forward, namely Pat Toomey and Cynthia Lummis. And I'll say this once, I'll say it again. I was a huge champion of Cynthia Lummis and what she's been doing with Wyoming, and it being a location where everyone in the cryptocurrency space was relocating to because it was very friendly to cryptocurrency. Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania has really stuck his neck out, and I'll play a clip from him later. Actually, I might have it loaded up right now, where he's just unloading on what. Here we go. Senator Pat Toomey, he's basically explaining where we are at currently. This was right after Senator Shelby said that he objected to the bill.
From Pennsylvania. There's like nobody who disputes that there's a problem here. You want to know the specifics of the problem? Here's, according to the underlying bill, this is what's going to pass. This is what's going to get sent probably ultimately to the president's desk. It's a reporting requirement, a transaction reporting requirement, including name, taxpayer ID number, dollar amount, date. It's imposed on any person who, for consideration, is responsible for regularly providing any service effectuating transfers of digital assets on behalf of another person.
Yes, he is correct. And to dive right into it, if there was someone who was creating code or any developer who was supporting the space, those individuals are going to be having to report all this to the government. It just seemed ludicrous. It was definitely written by people who knew absolutely nothing they were talking about, which leads me to another thing, which is there are a few people that are advocating and stepping for the cryptocurrency space. Capitol Hill, um, uh, but what I will say, and here's kind of gets down into another um, uh, overview of what happened earlier in the day, is that uh, so Shelby, when asked, ultimately him objecting to it, he objected to Senator Carper of Delaware, that he didn't agree to Shelby's own unrelated amendment to the bill. So Shelby wanted to add an unrelated amendment to the bill, a proposal which would add 50 billion in defense spending. Now, listen, I'm not opposed to defense spending whatsoever, but one thing that just frustrates the heck out of me and every single person in America is when you have something like infrastructure, a bill that's being pushed for infrastructure, meaning streets and roads and safety, and you start having all these politicians adding pork to it. It's just ridiculous. So that's basically what he wanted, and he objected to it because it wasn't added. So, I feel just as Jerry Brito did. This is several hours ago. He tweeted, I told you we're not done yet. And shout out to Jerry Brito. I'll get in a little bit of who Jerry Brito is. There's so many characters working in the space, and a lot of these individuals, I devote time to talk about who they are and what they do, because we are forever indebted to them, and they will be the unsung heroes, the founding fathers and mothers, so to speak, of cryptocurrency as we move forward. But here was get this. This is after Shelby shut this whole thing down. You get this bipartisan letter to colleagues in Washington, and this was sent by a few congressmen from the House. And I'm just going to go right down into the bottom. Cryptocurrency tax reporting is important, but it must be done correctly. When the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act comes to the House, we must prioritize amending this language to clearly exempt non-custodial blockchain intermediaries and ensure that civil liberties are protected. So in short, what's going to happen is there's going to be a number of senators getting up tomorrow and the rest of the week arguing over little details of cryptocurrency, pretending like they know what they're talking about, and at the end of the day, it's going to get kicked back to the House, and they're going to pick at it more. Such is the life of politicians and what happens in Congress here in the United States. Now, I want to jump back over to Jerry Brito. Jerry Brito is out of a think tank called Coin Center, and I would say of anybody who's advocating for the cryptocurrency space, who knows very well what they're talking about, who has worked heavily with regulators even before they were regulating. And here's him from about 8 years ago talking about regulation, specifically Bitcoin. Let me share with you what Jerry Brito has to say.
Bitcoin business has to comply with anti-money laundering laws, know your customer laws, and report. So first of all, identify who their customers are and report any suspicious activities, just like PayPal or Visa or any other company does. The problem with FinCEN's guidance is that it's pretty vague in nature about who has to comply. If you read it kind of strictly the way it's written, if you're using it for remittances, for example, I mentioned my mother sending a remittance overseas. Technically, the way if you read the guidance, my mother would qualify for for having to register with FinCEN and comply with anti-money laundering. I don't.
So, what he's talking about right here is the specifics, and let me not beat around the bush. This is what happens, and what he's explaining, when people aren't being thoughtful when it comes to policy. And if they're going to do any regulation or any policy, where it's not spelled out, just like this infrastructure bill is, what brokers are. What you end up doing is you end up doing more harm to the cryptocurrency space, which is either one of two things. For me, it either means that there is intentionally and purposefully an effort to thwart the cryptocurrency space, and I'll get to why that's a problem. The second is that there's just no knowledge of the cryptocurrency space, so all this stuff's being pushed forward willy nilly, not even caring whatsoever on the impact it'll have. Now, both of them lead back to the impact, which is this: at the end of the day, if you've got one of the largest growing industries in the United States that we would love to keep here, create jobs, create innovation, create more opportunity than any industry we've seen before, why on earth would you regulate it and scrub it down so there's literally nothing left for people to do in the United States other than be able to invest in it past a certain, I don't know, threshold that can, that don't mind paying the taxes on it? It's absurd. And if this is the direction that Congress is going to go, well, that's what's going to happen. You're going to see businesses flying outside the country, going to friendly countries. I've said this before, even Kazakhstan is friendly to the crypto space, Ukraine. And so it's just absolutely absurd. But going back to Charlie Britto and the Coin Center, they're based out of DC. And if there's anyone in the trenches who are walking through Capitol Hill, speaking to the senators, informing them about what's going on, it's these folks. So everyone from his staff, like I said, Jerry Brito, Robin Weissman, Peter Van Volkenberg, and Tony Hodge, and Araj Agrawal, and as well as their board of directors, Alex Marcos, Balaj, Srinivasa, Wences, Cesaris, and then the two aforementioned. I'll tell you, these are the only people who are advocating in Washington, D.C. I'll be honest, it makes me want to uproot myself and move there to help them out. Who knows? Maybe it's something I'll look at doing as a project in the future. If they've got room for the desert sun, sign me up. I'll be there in a heartbeat. That's all I've got for now. Stay tuned. I'll try and give you as much information I can about what's going on with regard to this amendment, as well as other news in cryptocurrency. So, for me, the Desert Sun, thank you for tuning in to Desert Sun Crypto.